One interesting comment I got at the show was from a pair of young schoolgirls who came aboard and said they liked the Cat the best because it had the most bouncy trampoline. And I asked why, and they said, well, all the other ones are loose. Well, the reason for that is that all the attachment points are close together, and the entire tramp is made from Dyneema, and there's virtually no stretch in it. The lifelines on the boat, which are triple, are also Dyneema, and there are carbon fiber stanchions that are the appropriate offshore CE rated heights. The generator hatch opens with a winch handle. They can be locked, both sides. It's a nice secure way to have a fiberglass hatch fasten here rather than the little ones that you pull and they break. This is a very robust system. It's adjustable. Stainless steel gas shocks as opposed to painted or just aluminum. And you can actually get right down inside of this locker. Inside the insulated battery compartment, there's the generator, of course, which in this case is a Fisher Panda, and that's inside of its own insulated box, so it's very quiet. There's a light switch near the hatch, easy to get to, a battery switch to shut off the Group 24 AGM battery from Mastervolt, and that's a 55 amp hour. And by the way, that's as powerful as a 4D flooded cell in surge capacity for starting, so that's great in cold weather. And since that's a 12 volt battery, it has its own 12 volt battery charger. There's an oil change pump here, Dagger Board control boxes, and a battery shut-off switch. As on many cats, you have storage lockers here. The difference is we have a generator in its own insulated compartment to the side. But in here we have a rather large locker. In this one we have a short power cord, but you can see just how deep it really is. Quite cleverly, the locker contains the vents for the water tanks, so there's no chance of getting salt water up into your tanks if they were on the side of the hull. And your next question will be is how does it drain? There's a little limbo hole right there. The port side locker has access to the chain, windlass, and your washdown system. This boat is set up for 4 headsails. We can attach a spinnaker, an asymmetrical or a code 0. We have about 110% Genoa, and we have about a 90% staysail that's on a self-tacking track. When you don't want to use this and you just want to use your Genoa, this will lay down on the tramp and it has a bag that goes over it. It stays attached here, just lowers. Same thing with the asymmetrical or the code 0, lays down on the starboard side in a bag, and you keep them attached to the tramp when you don't want them up. This boat has a large stainless steel delta anchor on a roller, and we attached it here to the hull itself or to the bridge deck itself, as opposed to going up to the very forward section of the carbon fiber crossbeam. You can do that, but you can nick and damage that a little bit. That's really up to you, but there are some setups here, so you can attach your bridle and also your mooring bridle all remotely from here, so it's a clean setup. The starboard forward locker is rather deep, and we'll take a quick tour of what's inside of here. In the starboard forward locker, there are 2 spare rudders. They are shallower draft than the ones that are on board now. They can be replaced in about 30 minutes by lowering them through their tubes with a line and then pulling the new ones up with a line and putting the pin through them. Port side locker has built-in steps, and underneath it has the water maker. That's why they're molded in. It hides the water maker, and you can lift them up with Velcro, and there are all your parts. But this is more of a place where you would keep your folding bikes, potentially scuba tanks, things like that. It's a cavernous locker. Water maker's underneath the steps here. AC receptacle, light switches, sail locker forward, your rudders. There's a battery charger under here. And you can see that we're attaching, or we do have fenders in this locker. Flagstaffs and things like that. There's some shelves. This just quickly shows access to the water maker. And it's a Spectra system. There's your high pressure ram. Very easy to work on, very easy to get to. Here we have 1.5 kilowatts of solar band panels. The Dagger boards are all carbon. There's very little clearance here, so it's a very tight fit. It's not one of these types of Dagger boards that bounces around and bangs around when you're sailing. If you had to, you can lift these straight out. You would do it either with a halyard or with a crane. The Dagger boards are rather special. First of all, they're carbon, and there's a jig that they put these in and test these each individually for every boat up to 15 tons. In fact, there was one circumstance where the jig broke because this was stronger than the jig. So that's really important. Another thing is that there's some safety features built into this. For example, it's a line driver, electric line driver that raises and lowers the Dagger board. And there's a safety line that keeps you from going too high or too low. So if you forget and you have your finger on the button, it won't let you overdo it. It's really a setup that's very important to understand, because when you're going in through attack, this is when you're lowering and raising your board so you have the least amount of pressure on them. You might be busy with attack and forget that your finger's on the button. Another aspect to consider is, what is the warranty on your Dagger boards? Is it read your warranty carefully on all the boats that you're looking at, because there might be one that, for example, has a limit on the speed that you could use your Dagger boards. And that's very, very important. And it's one of the reasons why HH went to carbon, because it allows a lot more pressure and a lot more speed. Each engine locker has a 57 horsepower Yanmar in it. There is a walking space that my right leg is on, which is nice to have over the top of the engine. The engines are mounted backwards. They're in a reversing drive for a sail drive, but very easy to get to the dipstick, to the sail drive dipstick. And being a Yanmar, you can actually change the oil of the sail drive in the boat, as opposed to other brands where you have to lift the boat out of the water and change it like an outboard. So inside of the locker, we have an AGM Group 31, and we have, of course, the muffler, the exhaust that actually has a through hole on it, so you can shut it off, and a bunch of other controls and filters and things like that that you would expect to see in an engine room. But it's very easy to maneuver in here. It has its own bilge pump. It's very well thought out. It's not the very back of the boat. It's not in the very tail where water's going to be constantly going on top of the hatch. In fact, where I am now, there's a washboard that can go here if you're in a following sea. Just helps keep water out of the cockpit. But there is a large gutter here as well with the drain. Here's your Group 31. Emergency parallel switches in yellow. On-off switches. Controller for the throttle and the gear shift. We have a sea strainer here that you can see inside what's going on with seaweed. I have one on my boat. It's been all over the place and it works great. We have a fire extinguisher system. Aft, also in the engine room, you can see your tubes for your rudders. That's your shut-off switch for your AC. And down at the bottom here is the bilge pump. The engine itself also has an emergency stop right here. On the 55 is a separate propane system just for the cooker, and that's accessed right here. The stove itself has another propane tank. There's an AC ice maker here, as well as storage with a large sink. If you put a cutting board here, it'd be a great place to skin the mahi-mahi that you just caught. With the Traveler, you have a couple of options. First of all, there's a big line driver in the middle here that allows you to control this from both helms. You have a port and a starboard control. It has a magnetic safety switch on it, so you can't over pull it or let it loose. It automatically will stop if you go too far. Another option for it, of course, is to use a manual setup here.